Welcome off the post. I'm Russ Cohen. We've got Anthony Mingione. And how are you?
Doing all right on this fine sunny Easter Sunday. How are you, Russ?
Yeah, me too. Me too. And Michael Jella, how are you?
I'll let you know in about 2 weeks.
Great. So you just put your life on hold. And we have Kevin Allen from Detroit Hockey Now. Kevin, how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
All right. So let's talk about some results of yesterday, and then we'll go into some of the other series, what we think might happen. So we'll go with Blues Jets. Kev, I don't know if you want to tell us who you think is going to win the series first, and then we'll go over what happened in the game. But basically, I picked Winnipeg to win. Anthony, who did you pick?
I had Winnipeg in 6.
Yeah, I got him in 5. Mike, who do you have?
I had Winnipeg in 5.
Okay. And so, Kev, I don't know who you have if you cared, but what did you see in yesterday's game?
Well, yeah, I had Winnipeg in 6. I saw what we saw all season, really, where I think there was always a lot of doubters. I think you heard all season long. Well, at some point the Winnipeg Jets are going to be the Winnipeg Jets, but they're a complete team, and they have all the elements you need in the postseason, led by, a good goaltender. And, St. Louis obviously had some momentum from putting together that winning streak at the end, but they're still not even close to being a complete team. And I think we saw that in the first game.
Yeah, I think the big thing, and then I'll let you go. I think the big thing was whoever wanted to nitpick with Connor Hellebuck, a lot of the reasons I always felt that they lost in the playoffs wasn't just on Connor Hellebuck. So even in this game, when they fell behind early, it's like I wasn't looking at it like a Hellebuck mistake. And then if you noticed, the team shut the door defensively, and Hellebuck played a lot better when all of a sudden guys weren't in the crease every 2 seconds.
Yeah, and I would also add to the fact that I think St. Louis is kind of like the perfect starter pack, I guess you could say, for the Winnipeg Jets. They had just enough experience, just enough to be, I think, a difficult enough opponent to remind the Jets that this is the postseason now, and this will not be a walk in the park. And we saw obviously, the old playoff trying to send a message moment from the Blues to let them know that. But overall, I think it was a good first test. It was good, I think, for Winnipeg to take a punch to the face a little bit here during the early part of the game. And then this is how you see when a team starts to deal with that, you see how they respond. And I think they tightened up defensively, which is the main area that they had to do in this game, especially to start the postseason. To also remind everybody, we are the Winnipeg Jets of this year, and we've got enough firepower that we can navigate difficult moments and be able to do what's necessary again in these circumstances.
Well, Russ, I mean, I don't think it was all about Hellebuck, but after setting the precedent of what he's done during the regular season, where he's going to win the Vezina, he had the best year by leaps and bounds. He's got a very good chance at winning the Hart for the first time since Jose Theodore about over 20 years ago. He was mortal yesterday. 3 goals on 17 shots. I called him Four Nations Connor because he was mortal in the Four Nations. He needed to out goaltend Jordan Binnington in the Four Nations, and he got out goaltended by Binnington. And in this, at least for the first half of the game, until he made that save on Kyrou at the end of the second period, I thought he was sort of lacking. Then in the third period, he played well, and Winnipeg took over the game. But I think the problem here is, and they won game 1, so you can't take that away from them. Without Velarde, without Ehlers, are they going to be able to generate enough offense? Scheifele had 3 points. Connor had 3 points. If they get that kind of production out of those guys, they're in good shape. But, St. Louis is going to narrow down on those guys, and that it's going to be up to guys like Iafallo and some of the second-level guys to pick up the slack.
I think they can do it. I mean, the first thing is I think still everybody is nitpicking with Connor Hellebuck because, again, you can't worry about did he have the greatest first period? No. But Russ, you have to worry about how he finished the game, and he finished strong.
He's now in that – as we mentioned this before, he's now in that sort of Sergei Bobrovsky, you got to show it to me in the postseason moment. And that's just where he's at, where he's been that good. that the question is going to be, okay, can you replicate this in the postseason? I think he's capable of it. I think there was definitely, a little bit of maybe first game jitters for the Jets, knowing the expectations, having the game at home. But now you've waded into the waters. Now it's time to swim.
Well, Kevin, I think he's the Toronto Maple Leafs of goaltenders. It's like, show me. You had a fantastic year, but now it's the playoffs when it counts. And if you don't show up, then you're a choker.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I wouldn't put it that strongly, but he does need to prove that he's going to be a playoff goalie. But what we saw in this game one is really what standard operating procedure in game ones, where all of a sudden now we say, well, Winnipeg have secondary scoring. Well, we always say that in the postseason, and that's certainly important for every team that wants to make a long run, and you have to get secondary scoring. And now that's going to be crucial for Winnipeg, because they are going to clamp down on the big guns that Winnipeg has, and they don't have as many as some teams do. But and the same thing on Hellebuyck. I mean, one bad period is not the same as one bad game. Like, one bad game can kill you in a playoff series. But a lot of goalies, I mean, how many times have we all written stories about, a goalie having a poor performance, and can he come back from it? It's all on him now, that sort of thing. So, I mean, even the good goalies, this happens to. But, the only issue with Hellebuyck, as Mike raised, is, he does not have a reputation yet of being a big-time postseason goalie.
Fair. And I think the other thing is it's hard to clamp down on Morrissey. So I'm not really worried about Winnipeg, to be honest. I think actually I'm more worried about St. Louis just holding their own, because I think they put full guns at Winnipeg and can't do much more than what they did, honestly. I think that's where that team is at.
Yeah, three goals is pretty much their output, and if they don't get, they're going to have Bennington really stand on his head to have a chance to win that series.
Yeah. So then we go to the Avs Stars, and we know that the Stars are up against it without Robertson, especially.
Yeah.
And so their injuries are a big factor. I still think even if they were full strength, they were going to lose this series. I do have the Avs in 7. I just think the Avs are too much for most teams. I think the problem with the Avs is you can clamp down on certain guys, but my whole thing is with McKinnon and Makar and Taves too. Taves is now a factor to the point where that is a dynamic most teams don't have, besides all the other players that are on that team, Ant. So I look at it and I'm like, they're a lot to handle. And Mackenzie Blackwood looked great.
Yeah, Mackenzie Blackwood looked great. And again, they strengthened themselves in the most key spot in my mind at the trade deadline when they brought in Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle. This team just looks. That was the one question that I had about this team is their spine down the middle. And now it's behind McKinnon. It's just a well-balanced lineup that has a lot of a lot of firepower, I think. And when you get through it, you have again a really great top pairing with Kel Makar and Devin Taves. They brought in Ryan Lindgren at the deadline, which I think was really important. And low key, I mean, it's in some ways Eric Johnson. Even in a limited role, he's been through it. And then of course, they upgraded in net, as you said, with Mackenzie Blackwood. They've got enough players who have been through the previous Stanley Cup run that I feel like they've got, I think, what it takes to be able to win the cup.
Yeah, I mean, the points I would make about Colorado is the most important things that happened to them happened long before they got into that game. They went through a lot of adversity early. They struggled. Their goaltending was horrible. And what I really like about this team is it never gets enough credit, but their management and their coaching in particular. I think Bednar is just an underrated coach. He does a great job of getting the most out of his players. But what I really liked, look at the moves they made, at the deadline, and or even before. But the McKenzie deal in particular, I really liked because that wasn't like going out and getting a proven goalie. That was hunting around and looking for a guy that may be better than everybody thinks he is. And they ended up getting a guy who's really, really helped them. I mean, he's really kind of stabilized their goaltending. I've seen, players quoted as saying, it's just been different since he's been there. They don't wonder what kind of goaltending they're going to get. They believe that on his worst day, he's going to be okay. And, that's important. You got to have that guy that's kind of stabilizes. So, the moves they made going in, and then as you've all pointed out, they do have guys that have been there before, and they have difference makers who have been there before. I mean, McKinnon was going like 100 miles an hour, last night. So there's a lot going for that team, and I didn't see Dallas winning the series just based on the fact that I think going through everything that Colorado did just prepared them for this postseason.
And on top of the Heiskanen injury, and I know he skated, but even if he comes back, he's not going to be close to.
He's not going to be 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you pile the Robertson injury on that on top of that, and it's really tough. Now the thing is with Blackwood, his problem has not been the quality of his play. It's been his availability. It's the injuries that he had in New Jersey, and then it seemed to straighten out when he was in San Jose. So, the fact that they got a goaltender, I mean, I would not have picked Colorado if Georgiev was their goaltender in this series.
No, nobody would have, because it got to the point where, like Kevin said, it was untenable. They were losing games because they didn't trust him. But I will say this about Blackwood. The last year and a half in Jersey, when he was healthy, he took a dip. And it was partially because of the team. It wasn't really health related. I think he just needed to get that change, get out of New Jersey. And San Jose kind of let him reset, because we all loved him 3 years ago, and then we kind of were souring on him.
Yeah. I mean, but the bottom line is, when they made that trade, nobody said, "Oh man, like Colorado's setting goal." They said, "Well, let's see what happens."
Right.
And,
we knew it would be better than Georgiev. We knew that.
Yeah. Well, everybody in the league would have been better than Georgiev.
Right. It's a low bar.
Even Matt Murray, right, Russ?
Well, we'll see, Mike. Matt Murray, I don't know if he's on the postseason roster.
He's with the Marlies, but he's ready and waiting.
Yeah. All right. So we might as well let the show go off the rails and talk about the Leafs-Sens series that hasn't happened yet. And so picks-wise, I picked the Leafs in 6. Anthony picked them in 6. Mike, Senators in 7. Mike is incapable of picking the Leafs to win anything. And Kevin, I'll let you just talk about that about Mike, and then what you think of the series.
Yeah, about Mike. I just brought Mike up. I did another show recently, and I said I have a friend that, when we're all, and I've talked about this before, when we're all young, we all do what Mike does. You pick against your team,
right?
So
reverse psychology.
Yeah, reverse psychology, all that. But we all grow out of it. You hit your 10th birthday, and you hit your 10th birthday, and then it's time to move on and do that. But Mike hasn't been able to outgrow that. So now fortunately for him, the Maple Leafs haven't let him down because he's they haven't been able to win, but they have played very well this season. And the point I would make is like, I do talk to people still around the league, and I've learned through the years that when you talk to people who make these kind of decisions about teams on a regular basis, they kind of know what's going on. And there's been a drumbeat all season about how different this Toronto team is, and what they have that will make them better in the postseason. And I've heard it enough to believe it. I think there's a chance here. Plus, I'm just not sure how healthy Brady Tkachuk is, and they haven't been around in the postseason. I believe in Brady Tkachuk, I really do, but how much can he do? Coming back, and I just don't know that they have enough there. So, and Stolar, it'll be interesting to see what he can do, but I don't think negatively of him in goal. I mean, he's played pretty well.
This is the thing. I mean, I have heard the same thing, Kev, from from reporters in the press box who are well-known Leaf haters, that when they came into Buffalo and won 4-0. Well, this team looks different. I mean, their defense is better with Carlo and Tanev, and they have a top 4 that is really good. Ekman Larson and McCabe are going to be back to the playoffs. The goaltending is improving. Yes, I mean, Stolarz at 32 years old has not started an NHL playoff game. Joseph Wall has more experience, and he's 6 years his junior. In terms of talent, the Leafs should win this series, but woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, that's the whole thing here. It's like, I mean, granted, on paper they should win this, but you've got a decade of scar tissue with this core group that has done nothing but lose, except for one round against Tampa Bay, when Tampa Bay had been to, I think it was 3 Stanley Cup Finals and winning 2 cups. So they have to prove it to me.
Don't you think they're aware of that? And don't you think they're probably sick of hearing about it, Mike?
Yeah, but then stick it, stick it to me. That's all I'm saying. It's like, Russ.
Mike is willing to be the sacrificial lamb. He's willing to be put on. He's willing to self-immolate himself in order for the Leafs to advance.
This is not performative. It's like, I honestly, until they do it, I'm not going to believe they're going to do it. They've, as Kevin said, they've let me down. No, they didn't let me down. They've proven me correct. I'm right. They've been a choke artist for a decade.
He needs hockey. You need hockey therapy.
Well, Mike, if this was a math theory, about how this works for you and Toronto being horrible, at some point the antithesis of the math theory is. And we've seen it, and you can name a bunch of players, but I'll go with Ed Belfour and Steve Yzerman. Okay, Ed Belfour was he can't win the big game, he can't win the big game, he can't win the big game, and then he did, and then he was a Hall of Famer. Yeah. Steve Yzerman, we want to run him out of town. He can't win. He was just a one-dimensional player. He altered his game a little bit, and now he's considered one of the greatest captains ever. So at some point, the Toronto will win a Stanley Cup, or they'll have success in the postseason, and then all this will be washed away.
Unfortunately, I'll be 6 feet under at 4.
I knew it. You just took the words right out of my mouth, Mike.
Here's the good news. I'll tell you the good news. The good news is, like, if the Leafs were a car owner, instead of getting a paint job this time at Earl Scheib, they went to a better place. So you should have a little more confidence. That's what I would say.
And the reason why I like the Leafs in these playoffs, I feel, again, beyond the structure of the team, I'm a believer in Craig Berube. I think you don't go. It's not an easy environment, obviously, to coach in Toronto, and I feel that the Leafs have responded well to his stewardship. And you add that again, the only area, again, Mike is, I'm not going to say with the goaltending, that's like literally for me the only area of the Leafs that sort of might be in question. Whereas the rest of the lineup, I feel like is as rock solid as it can be at the moment. And again, I don't believe the Senators are the team. I don't believe the Senators are going to be the team to put them out.
There's too many flaws on the message, and I'll let you finish, Anthony. But I'm going to tell you, by sitting next to him, Anthony loves the Leafs in this playoff run. He does.
I do. I think this is. I really do believe that, and I'll put this out there. I believe if the Leafs are able to get past round 2, I think they're going to be in the Stanley Cup final. I do believe that. I really do. If they get past that hump, I think they're going to get to the final.
Yeah.
I know. Mike, you don't even have to. I know what your response is going to be. So we're just going to go with that. I'm willing to be on record, and there we go. There it is. That's what I was looking for. The rain cloud.
Well, that's fine.
I'm wrong. I'm wrong. So be it. But I'm willing to put it out there.
We'll let Mike mash his teeth on that one. So Devils, Carolina Hurricanes. What's interesting is I think people have reverted back in this to the sense that, well, the Devils never play good against Carolina. Look at the Devils' injuries, blah, 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 blah. I took a different tact in this because I saw when they got Dougie Hamilton back how that changes their blue line. Now Luke Hughes doesn't have to be as responsible, and it changes that. The one thing I'm going to go back to here is a couple Devils, and I know Anthony and I kind of gave a nod to Jesper Bratt, who had an amazing year and gets almost no credit, and Nico Hischier has stepped up ridiculously without Jack Hughes there. And so I watched, I'm going to go way back to when Nico was with the Swiss team in the World Juniors and kind of led them and surprisingly beat teams. And so, you could talk about Sebastian Aho all day, and I still think Carolina, without Rantanen, without Netchus, will struggle for points the same way that the Devils will. And the Devils, I think, with Markstrom in net, are up to the task to whoever Carolina puts in net. And so, honestly, I know Hischier is going to win the battle for faceoffs against Aho, but I think he's going to help win the battle. And I got the Devils in 7 because I think Carolina, is in a weird spot now because they tried to make moves. They didn't work. They're going with the same old goaltending. And I think Rob Brind'Amour is going to have to start to tweak the way he coaches a little bit if this doesn't work. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, I picked the Hurricanes in 7, and I really wanted to take the Devils, but the injury to Hughes is just something that is too big of a gap to jump. I mean, the thing is, I like Markstrom over if Brind'Amour would actually have the confidence, I'm not 100% sure he's going to go with Chetkov.
I'm not either.
Yeah, he's going to go to Freddie Anderson, and we know Freddie Anderson, again, we know his record other than one dash to the conference final, I think, with Anaheim. He's been a first round out most
We can dig in the archives for that one with Mike talking about Freddie Anderson. We've got some nuggets for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Russell. The oldies but goodies here on 97 Rock.
We have to skip a little further back from the Justin Hull chapter, so you got
and the Jack Campbell stuff. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was just gonna say, the one thing about Carolina is, it amazes me. They're ranked in the top 10 in terms of goals scored and then goals against. They're ranked. But they're the worst team with two, both in offense and defense, top 10 that I've ever seen. Like, they don't feel like they're that good when I watch them play. Like, their defense is not as good as it was a couple of seasons ago, at all. Now, they're still, play that congestive style. It feels like when you get in their zone, there's like 25 people there trying to prevent you from getting the goal, and that's been effective. But their offense just isn't explosive. Like, even though they're a top 10 scoring team, even Aho wasn't, in my opinion, wasn't the same player he's been in the past. So, I have a lot of reasons why I could pick against. And again, the goaltending, I think New Jersey will end up with better goaltending in this series. However, I completely agree with Mike. It's hard for me to pick, and I didn't pick the Devils winning the series without Jack Hughes. It's just, that Carolina is still good enough that, it's going to take a maximum effort. And I don't know if you can do it without Hughes.
Yeah, I'm gonna concur with both Mike and with Kevin on this. The things you guys just stated, obviously, I think are big, are really, really large gaps. So I think it's enough. I think Carolina is good enough to get past this series, but if they're playing a Washington Capitals team in the second round, they're going to get put to the woodshed.
All right. So I also want to point out some housekeeping. Matthew Blittner from sportsology.com is in Carolina, so people should go to my website and read all about the series because he's going to be down there, and then cover it in New Jersey too. And when I get back from vacation, I'm going to cover it in New Jersey too. So if it's still going on, which I think it will be. All right. So then we move to the Vegas Golden Knights against the Minnesota Wild. Interestingly enough, G. Bouillon will make his NHL debut in the playoffs. I remember Chris Kreider doing that for the Rangers. It doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's enough for the Wild. It's certainly, like, his skating is tremendous, but it's a tough call to put him in there. I don't think there's anybody on this panel that picked the Minnesota Wild. It's just a matter of how many games we picked everybody in. I've got Vegas in 5. Mike's got in 5. Anthony's got a sweep. Vegas, like, we don't talk about it.
It had to be at least one sweep out of the first round, and to me that seemed. I don't think it may not happen, but I think it's the series that's the most.
None of us talk enough about Vegas during the year because they're kind of like this well-oiled machine, and as long as Mark Stone's healthy, they seem like they always have a really good chance. And I think this year is the same, except Jack Eichel now is like a legit top 5 player in the league.
And Kev, I'm not looking past Minnesota in terms of picking Vegas, but I look at Vegas and I look at the Western Conference and the path that they have. So they face Minnesota, then they face the winner of Edmonton, LA, and Edmonton is not the Edmonton of last year. And LA, we know they're limited offensively, but they're really good defensively and really good at home. They have the easiest path to the Stanley Cup final in the West. So that's I mean, I think they're going to beat Minnesota. I think they're going to beat Minnesota handily. We know Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson Ek came back late in the season. You know, I mean, I give Minnesota credit for having a decent year, but I don't think
it's a puncher's chance kind of situation.
They're a middleweight. They're a middleweight, and Vegas is a heavyweight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I like what Russ said too. We haven't paid any attention to Vegas all season long, and yet we all kind of know what they do have. And this is a franchise, and look, if they make another long extended run, I wonder if the league will, start to look at things. They have no respect for the draft. It's Vegas Golden Knights, like they don't keep any of their first round picks. I saw George McPhee in an elevator, and I was laughing about how I said, I made a prediction for trade deadline day, and I said I predicted you would trade your one remaining first round pick, and of course you did do that. They traded Brisson, and he just laughed. But it's the Golden Knights and the Panthers are the two teams who think you can build a championship team without really getting in the first round picks, and they've done it very effectively. Now, the Vegas has the advantage of being Vegas. Like, players want to go there, so they were able to get players to come there. But they also have done a tremendous job of sort of making a determination of how you build a really good team, and they're built for success in the postseason. Like, they've geared their whole team for that.
But I think, Kev, you matter-of-factly said it. Like, George McPhee is like their secret weapon. He has been since the expansion draft.
For sure. Yeah. They just do a good job. They're heavy. They're hard to play against. They understand what it takes to win tight games in the postseason, and they prepare all season long, including with their salary cap, to be effective in the postseason. And I like their chances. I took them at the start of the season, and I still think they could easily end up in the finals.
I would concur. Vegas it's an impressive team. You just look them up and down their lineup defensively. Adding Hannafin last year, it's just you just go through it, and it's just a well built team. To me, I think they're a Western Conference finalist. I am hoping, crossing my fingers, that we get a Colorado Vegas Conference Finals, because I think that's going to be such a such a high quality clash. In many ways, it could very well be better than what the Stanley Cup Final might be, which it's entirely possible, because those teams are that good. So
yeah, no doubt. All right, another series. I think this one will be fun. The Canadiens and Capitals, because I think you got the Alex Ovechkin factor. You've got the Canadiens fans factor, which is fun to have them back in it, because that place comes alive regardless of what's happening in the game, especially pregame. That crowd's going to just be silly. I've been writing about it for weeks, for the Hockey News on the website. But again, when it gets down to, the brass tacks here, I don't think any of us picked the Canadiens. I've got the Caps in 5. Mike's got the Caps in 6. Anthony's got the Caps in 5. I will say this about the Canadiens, having covered them for at least half a season, more than I normally would pay attention to them. They're getting good coaching. St. Louis definitely had to overcome that early season stuff, especially with reports that things were a little shaky for a little while, and they had to give them a vote of confidence early on. All that's changed. I don't know what Ivan Demidov is going to do. I don't even know if he'll play the first game. We'll see.
Oh, he's winning the Conn Smythe Trophy. Come on, Russ.
I know. I think he'll play, but I don't know how much he's going to play. The Capitals are really playing rope-a-dope with their injuries, because, they have guys out. Logan Thompson is back now, so we at least know that. Protas, I don't know. I don't know if he's playing in game 1 or not.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I look at it and I say the speed of the Canadiens is better than people think. The Capitals' defense is better than people think. And I also think that Nick Suzuki is better than most people think. I think Nick Suzuki has really taken a step here to be almost an elite player in this league. I pointed out, I had done this one search where, he's been on the ice for 80 goals for this year. And so, that's, when he's out there, when Caulfield's out there, the power play, it's really good. But all that said, I don't know if they're winning more than one game. I think they're capable of winning 2. What does anybody else think on this panel?
Well, I think one of the issues we have here is we have two momentum teams. The Capitals rode the momentum of Ovechkin's goal chase all season long, and everybody got excited. Dylan Strom had his best season. They've had a number of players who have really kind of stepped up this year, and that's sort of been overlooked. But they've felt good about themselves. They really got excited by the whole Ovechkin thing, and I think they're not done with that. So I think they're ready to go. And of course, Montreal, their momentum was just getting in the playoffs. Like they worked at it, and they're a very similar team to the team I cover, the Red Wings, in terms of, Detroit had Larkin, they had Suzuki, they had Caulfield. The Red Wings had DeBrincat, similar players. They both had used young players, Sider and Raymond, Hudson, and the Canadiens had younger players as well. But the big difference is, they ended up figuring out how to win the important games. Detroit could not do that. So,
Right.
and that's a talent. That's a talent that to be able to figure out how to win when you really need it. I mean, they ended up being able to do that. And even at the end, when, all of a sudden Columbus hung on and Detroit hung on for an extra game. Like, so to me, that really didn't mean anything. Both Columbus and Detroit knew they weren't going to, get in, because I think Montreal had built, one for him. So I give a lot of credit for the job they did just to get in the postseason. But I do think, Washington is, just excited to be in the playoffs and still playing on a high from the Ovechkin goal chase.
Ironically, I think the Canadiens are the Capitals of last year, where they got in the playoffs, and that was their Stanley Cup. Getting into the playoffs with that team rebuilding was a feat for Spencer Carberry. I think it was a feat for Marty St. Louis to get that team with all the gaps that they had. They played really well down the stretch, but them getting in the playoffs, there's probably going to be some sort of subconscious situation there where, okay, we're satiated here. We got into the playoffs. Now reality is struck, and we're facing the team that is the best team and has been the best team in the Eastern Conference. I think they can take a game. I think Montembeault could steal a game, but I don't see any way, unless there's a massive injury situation with the Capitals, that the Habs pull out the series.
Okay. Now the series where Mike's vote doesn't matter in this one. He would vote against Edmonton if it was Gretzky and Messier still playing.
Oh.
So it doesn't matter. Grant Fuhr can be in net. He picked against them. But the interesting thing is, we all look at this series now, and it's kind of like, I think even mid-season, I was still like iffy about the Kings. Then you start digging into Darcy Kemper's numbers. They're really good. Drew Doughty's there. He's healthy. Adrian Kempe's had a great year. Kopitar's had a great year. Like they know how to win. They only have 5 losses, I think, at home.
Yeah.
So this is a series now where I think some of the foibles for Edmonton are going to show. Like the goaltending, I haven't liked their goaltending all year. Their defense is still in question. And so, like, I look around at the picks, and I took the Kings in 7. Anthony took the Kings in 7. Mike took the Kings in 6. Mike, you'll go last here because you're never going to say anything nice about Edmonton. But anyhow,
Kev, deserve it.
I'll start. So
we'll go.
Kevin, you first. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Kemper has just been so incredible this season. He really has been good, and that is a very good team in LA, and it seems like we've seen nothing but inconsistency again out of the Edmonton Oilers. So, it's easy, I think, for me to say that I was taking the Kings, but I still look at Draisaitl and Connor McDavid and say, at some point they're going to win. So I took Edmonton at 7. Just saying that they're going to have to rise up and play better, because the Kings are a really good team and probably been underrated all season.
But you don't have complete confidence, do you?
No, I don't. This series for sure was the most difficult one for me.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I felt.
What hurt things for me from Edmonton's perspective is you guys all know, I am a big Matthias Ekholm proponent. Yeah. I think he's such.
Yeah,
I loved him in Nashville. I think he was the absolute perfect fit for the Edmonton Oilers when they made their run last year. It's tough for me to pick them without him on that blue line. As good as the star power is on, the Edmonton still has a lot of offensive firepower up front. And again, they do have the postseason experience, from last season. It's a tough. I think if Edmonton at home, it's one of those things where home ice doesn't matter as much. I think in this series it absolutely does. That being said, Edmonton with their experience, if they win Game 1,
right,
everything we talked about with regards to LA's home ice advantage kind of goes out the window. That being said, I like LA's structure. I like how they're built. I think they have the defensive capability of being able to. They're going to have moments in this series where they're going to have to deal with Draisaitl or McDavid going off on them, which is why I think this is a 7-game series. But when push comes to shove, I like the Kings structure. I think they have the motivation as well, the chip on their shoulder to try to beat Edmonton. And I think it'll take a lot out of them. I don't think LA is going to go much further than this series, but I do think they're going to win this in 7.
The Kings getting home ice was an absolute imperative.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know, and it's sort of fog of war. We don't know how serious these injuries are. Like Draisaitl is not 100%. McDavid probably is close to 100%, and doesn't really matter because he's superhuman. But not having Frederick, not having Evander Kane, Jake Woolman. I mean, that's the problem. They got to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final with 3 defensemen. Right. 3 good defensemen. The rest of the defense was,
and you can do that. I mean, we saw that happen with Philadelphia in 2010. They got there with 3 good defensemen,
but not 2. And that's what they have right now. They without Wallman and without Ekholm, you've got Darnell Nurse and you've got Bouchard. The rest of their defense is borderline NHL, high AHL caliber. It really is not good. So, I mean, now does LA have the offensive ability to take advantage of that? If they do, then they win this series. But if McDavid and Draisaitl can still, make them be back on their heels, then Edmonton can win the series. LA it's a Toronto-Boston scenario. Toronto could never beat Boston, and if LA loses this series, then LA can never beat Edmonton.
I'm going to go with this last series, and we're going to go with Kevin first because I need to find out the wisdom in how is Tampa and Florida taking until the 22nd to start this series. It's just, it makes no sense to me, Kev. This is going to be like the best series possibly of all of them, and why are we waiting so long?
Yeah, no, there's no answer for that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure.
I have an answer.
What is it?
The answer is they want them to heal up so they can beat the shit out of each other and inflict as much pain as possible, because they know this is the
or positively you could say they're saving the best series for the last one.
This is the best of the 8 first-round series.
For sure.
No doubt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I took Tampa on this, and despite the fact that of Florida being the defending champion, despite the fact that they're saying Matthew Tkachuk's going to back, but it's the same thing that I said about Brady Tkachuk. Yeah, he's coming back, but is how good is he? And you always believe you'll get the best out of Matthew Tkachuk, but Tampa Bay all season long, you kept thinking, well. Can they really be this good? Well, they are that good. And, they've changed there's no doubt that their depth eroded, after their cup wins. There's no doubt about that. But they've sort of retooled, and guys like, Hagel played a bigger role. They're having, changes. Their defense, like you can't even name all their defensemen anymore.
And Kevin, we talk about Vegas, with first-round picks moving them on. Tampa's Vegas East, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They don't respect it either. They just, keep retooling. They make trades. They add guys. They give up draft picks. But, the number one consistent element of that, because I watched the team the other day, and it feels like even Hedman is not quite the player that he once was.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy that is Vasilevsky.
Yep.
And I watched him down in the home stretch, and boy, was he good. And I just think, that's it. I mean, it's not like Florida doesn't have a goalie too, but I feel like Vasilevsky gives them a little bit of an edge this season. So, I'm taking them in 7. I think it's going to be a long, hard series. And, Florida just has had so many injuries this year. And then, how good is Ekblad going to be after 2 games? He's missed 20. That's a long time to be out. And so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Hellebuck, Vasilevsky would be the runaway Vezina winner. He had over 920 save percentage. His record was ridiculous. I mean, I look at this series. It's going to be a war of attrition. I mean, I'm waiting, Kev, to see the line of Kachuk, Bennett, and Marchand. Throw the rats on the ice because there are already 3 of them already out there. But it's gonna be a war. And I mean, I picked Lightning in 7 because of what we just talked about in terms of the Panthers being wounded injury wise and Ekblad. But this is the best news for the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they somehow get by Ottawa, these two teams going fixed bayonets against each other like it's the Battle of Bull Run. I mean, my God, I mean. Then you get a weakened opponent in the second round. They're still going to be great.
I go with Gettysburg, by the way, over Bull Run. Bull Run was pretty much a rout for the Confederates. They'll be closer to a sweep. I would go more Gettysburg or Antietam in this case.
Okay, it's the peach orchard in the second day of Gettysburg. Okay, Anthony, Jesus.
Can't help the history. Can't help the history. You can't help the history teacher when it comes to that. We gotta be accurate.
I got a master's almost.
I'll let Anthony go because Anthony is the only one on the panel to pick the Panthers in 7.
Yes.
So you can make your case, and then I'll.
It is such a coin flip series. Kevin, I know you said the Kings. I know you said the Kings Oilers series was the toughest one for you. This is the toughest one for me. I keep having in the back of my head, Game 7, double overtime. Could be anybody. I just got this image of Brad Marchand getting a greasy goal at in double OT with everybody basically bled white from this series. That's to me. I mean, I can make an argument for both sides. I'm gonna give the Panthers in a Game 7, even in Tampa, that little extra nudge over the top, just a little extra nudge over the top.
And as he scores the game-winning goal, he flips the bird to Don Sweeney and the Jacobses in Boston.
And that's the thing. It was the trade that nobody expected, and the OT double. I'm thinking the double OT goal that nobody expected.
I mean, I'll mention 2 things. I mean, Nikita Kucherov should always be mentioned just because, he's had another.
He's so good. He's so good.
Tremendous year.
And low-key, Gensel as well. Their wing depth is, I mean, it's just Cirelli this year is a legit Selke.
Hagel is way better than I thought he would.
Hagel's been incredible this season. It's like every guy they made deals for, several of the guys they made deals for, it's worked out, which is why, again, we don't talk about, the picks that they've lost because the guys they've traded to the guys they've acquired have been such massive contributors that we don't even think about those picks being lost.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say is I think as far as being underrated now, I may be biased because I did a book signing with this guy, but Ryan McDonough led the league in plus minus with a plus 43. And at 35, he still had 152 blocks, where the most he's ever had in his career was 182 in his second year with the Rangers. He's just been tremendous. I didn't know what he had left when he came back, but I think he showed us.
He may be a Hall of Famer.
He might be. I mean, he is a borderline Hall of Famer. I mean, that's really, something considering Montreal didn't even want to give him the time of day after drafting him, but that's way back. That's in the way back machine. Kev, one last thing. We don't hear anything other than they're talking about the CBA. So should we assume there's nothing contentious that's going to come out of the CBA, and maybe by the end of the cup,
well, there will be something contentious. So yeah, I mean, it's not going to go as smooth as Gary Bettman wants it to, for sure. But I do think it's different now because we've reached the point where this system is so mature that they're fine tuning it. But there's going to be some things, and they're going to have to sort out the CHL situation in terms of what happens to a draft pick after he goes to college. If you draft him out of the CHL and then he goes to college, how many years do you have to sign him? Those kinds of things. And then the August 15th thing. Although GMs tell me that the GMs are not all that concerned about the fact that if a guy stays to a senior year and then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. But it seems
they like it. They won't admit it, but they like it because otherwise they could have changed it a million years ago, Kev.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean you need to do it at a CBA, so they could have changed it in the previous CBA.
Yeah, or the one before that, or the one before.
They didn't do it. But there's always the other issue too that always comes up is that the counting of revenue, what is legitimate, hockey related revenue.
Right.
So there's going to be some of that. But I do think, the fact that we all know owners do not want to play these in-season tournaments, and players do. And the fact that Bettman, went along with that, they got that, the Four Nations thing, like that to me, that was an olive branch. And the Olympics are a big thing. And I think that said, hey, look, we don't want to fight anymore. Let's not fight. And that doesn't mean they won't, but I do think those are elements. So I think it's going to go smoother than it's been in the past. But there will always be things that I mean, people just don't realize the minutia in these contracts, like the thread count of towels and visiting dressing rooms. I mean, those issues come up.
It's not Egyptian cotton, is it, Kev?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, that wasn't a major issue, but it is an issue that comes up. So,
if Marty Walsh wants to deviate the good feeling, he has to make sure that he asks for expanded playoffs and a 1-8 playoff system, and then Gary Bettman will walk away from the table.
Well, that's just the craziest thing about it. Like this year in particular, I thought again, about and what's interesting is Bettman has always been accused of thinking only about dollar signs. Well, if he had a play-in system for the postseason to expand the playoff pool to 18 or 20 teams and play the kind of the rat tail to get into there, I mean that would add so much revenue to the NHL. But he won't do it out of tradition. He likes the tradition of just simply 4 rounds, and I think his basic position is, hey, look, I get it. I understand why everybody might want it, but let the next commissioner do that.
Well, that's the whole thing. So Kev will daily do that the minute that Gary Bettman walks away and there's expansion.
I guess for sure. Yeah.
They see how it works for the NBA. I mean,
it works for everybody.
And they'll have more teams. Nobody wants to hear it, but they're going to have more teams. So
yeah, Arizona will be back in the league.
Yeah, the minute you get to a full expansion, then you need it. You almost need to have it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because as it is now, half the league doesn't get in. Like, when I first started covering the league, there were 21 teams. So, everybody with a valid driver's license got into the
playoffs. Six teams didn't get in for a long time.
16 out of 21.
Yeah, 5 teams, right? It was 5.
Yeah. 5 teams.
Hey, and if they expanded, Buffalo might actually have a chance. Hopefully.
Well, that's like the Jets making the playoffs, Mike. I mean, whatever. Let's
not talk.
Well, the draft's Thursday. It's hard for me not to think about it. All right, that's it. Kev, thanks so much for coming on. Everybody should read him stuff on Detroit Hockey Now. And that's it for Off the Post. We'll catch everybody next time.
Enjoy the games, everybody.